A boy collapses from hunger inside a pharmacy, falling at the feet of a billionaire. The man hands over the medicine, but when he hears what the boy whispers as he wakes up, something inside him shatters. One word, just one, will send chills down your spine. The pharmacy floor was cold, cold like the boy's skin as he dropped to his knees between the shelves of cold medicine. The sound of his fall was small, dull, like the world was too busy to notice. People around him paused for a second, no more than that, before going back to their own prescriptions, their own pain. Only one pair of eyes didn't look away. Eyes behind dark lenses, framed by a perfectly tailored suit and a silence that hurt. The boy was no more than 10, thin, sweating and clutching a crumpled plastic bag. Inside it, 3 coins, an empty box of acetaminophen, and a folded note. That was all he carried. He stumbled once, twice, trying to reach the counter, but his body gave out first. He collapsed, face up, lips parted, searching for air that wouldn't come. And then, the man knelt down, slowly, as if that movement cost more than just effort. He lowered himself in front of the boy like one would before an altar. His hands, so clean, so well kept, touched the child's damp face, and the clash of worlds felt like an electric shock. He said nothing, just opened the briefcase he carried, pulled out a small insulin vial, prepared the syringe with professional precision, and injected it into the boy's thin arm with the tenderness of someone who had done this before, but not for others. Behind him, in line, an older woman cleared her throat loudly. A man in a baseball cap mumbled something about drama and went back to filling out his form. No one noticed the tear that nearly slipped from the billionaire's eye. Nearly. When the boy opened his eyes, the silence between them was louder than any noise in the room. He blinked slowly, trying to focus, and then he spoke. One single word, a word that made the man turn his head as if punched in the gut. It wasn't thank you. It wasn't help. It was something much more intimate, much more personal. Dad. But he didn't know the worst part yet. The boy had no idea who the man in front of him was. That word didn't come from recognition. It came from somewhere deeper, from his semi-conscious mind, reaching for the safest image it knew, even if that image no longer existed. But the billionaire heard it as a sentence. A reckoning. 10. Years overdue. No one else in that pharmacy knew the man holding the boy had lost a son exactly 10 years ago, in a public hospital less than 20 minutes from there. No one knew he never visited pharmacies. That morning, he had changed. His usual route on an inexplicable impulse. That the insulin vial was in his briefcase because he'd dreamed of it the night before. But there was something no one expected. The boy wasn't alone. At the pharmacy entrance, leaning against the glass, stood a woman. Pale, trembling hands, wide eyes. She had followed him there without knowing how she'd explain what she carried, on her shoulders or in her belly. And now, seeing that man kneel before her son, she knew she couldn't hide the truth any longer. The billionaire stood up, eyes fixed on the ground. He still held the note from the plastic bag. When he unfolded it, the shaky handwriting stole the air from his lungs. It was hers. It was his. But what she wrote, only he would understand. He looked at the boy, then at the woman by the door. And, for the first time in years, something inside him began to crack. Something he'd spent too long trying to keep whole. The pharmacist called out for the next customer, but no one moved, because at that moment, a second boy walked through the door, with the same worn expression. He wasn't there for medicine. He was looking for the brother who had been missing for over 3 weeks, and he recognized the man in the suit. Now it was too late to run. The note was still between his fingers as he walked through the pharmacy aisle, his steps unsure. The paper, yellowed and folded at the edges, held 3 short lines, sharp as knives, no signature. But he knew. He knew because that handwriting had lived like a scream in the dark corridors of his memory. And because no one else in the world could write something so simple and so devastating. If you ever find him, don't ask about me. Just give him this, and look him in the eyes, the way you never looked into mine. The woman who wrote it was the boy's mother, and the billionaire knew exactly who she was. Her name was Claire. She had disappeared 11 years ago, taking with her something he, out of pride or fear, had never tried to get back. Until now. But he still didn't. Know the worst part? Across the pharmacy, the second boy, the one who had just come in, was walking toward him. Hollow eyes from hunger and sleepless nights. A faded NBA t-shirt no one remembered. Tucked under his arm was a notebook, the hardcover kind. Inside it, names of places where he'd searched for his brother. Each page, an unfinished map. Each line, a dying hope. And now he looked straight at the man in the suit. Not because he recognized him from the news or the Forbes list, but because there was something about the way the man had touched his brother, the way he held that note, something that didn't match the rest of this cold, indifferent world. The billionaire turned slowly. He saw the boy coming closer, noticed how the two children shared the same nose, the same restless eyes, felt the weight of a decade pressing down on his back, and only then looked back toward the door. Claire was gone, just like she always did, like she did the day she walked out the front door of the house they once bought together, young dreaming. That day she left only a letter on the piano. He never read it, crumpled it without opening, because he believed that those who walk away don't deserve to be heard. Now, more than a decade later, a new letter made his hands shake. "Are you his father?" the boy with the notebook asked, voice raw and scratching from inside. The billionaire didn't answer. His silence was a denial rehearsed for years, but his eyes, that damp, hardened look, said the opposite. And the boy understood. He slowly put the notebook away and stepped back. "We sleep in a warehouse. Down on 6th and Main," he said, offering the last scrap of dignity he had left. "If you want to talk to her, she shows up there sometimes. Not always." And then, he said it. "I think she only comes when she's scared, or when the little one gets worse." The words hit the man's chest like a muffled thunderclap, because Claire only came around when she was scared too. He knew that about her. And that meant one thing. The woman he once loved, who now drifted through the city like a ghost, was haunted by something far bigger than regret. He slipped the note into his pocket and looked around. The pharmacy carried on with its absurd routine, people paying bills, picking up bandages, avoiding eye contact. The city had no time for drama, but he did. For the first time in years, he did. "I'll go there," he said to the boy, almost in a whisper, but there was something he didn't expect. As he stepped outside, he noticed a faint handprint on the glass, small, almost invisible, damp, as if someone had stood there watching, unsure whether to enter or run. The mark was fresh. Claire had been there, less than a meter away, watching everything, and she had disappeared again. But this time, she left more than just a note. She left a trail. And when he followed that trail to the corner, he saw something that froze his blood. A blonde woman, hair tied up in a red scarf, was arguing with two men inside a car. Even from a distance, he knew, Claire was in danger, and for the first time, in 11 years he ran. The sun was setting crooked between tall buildings, casting long shadows over the cracked asphalt. The billionaire ran like he wasn't wearing a $10,000 suit, like he wasn't carrying a lifetime of cold decisions on his back. Sweat trickled down his neck, soaking his shirt, but he didn't stop. Because across the street Claire was cornered. Two men boxed her in near a grey car, the kind that disappears too easily in forgotten city streets. She was gesturing wildly, shoulders tense, the red scarf now slipping down the side of her face. He crossed the street without looking. A driver slammed on the brakes, honked, yelled something, but the sound vanished into the wind. Because in that moment, only Claire's eyes mattered. She saw him and froze, as if time had rolled back 11 years, but none of the things that needed to be said had ever been spoken. But he still didn't know the worst part. The men saw him too, and they recognized something, not who he was, but how he looked at her. A look you don't give to strangers, and that changed everything. One man stepped back, waiting for backup. The other grabbed Claire's arm, yanked her toward the car. She fought back, kicking, shouting, but no one was around to help. The corner was too empty, the world too fast. He reached the car just in time to grab the door before it slammed shut. He shoved it open hard. Claire's eyes went wide. For a split second, she looked like she was about to say something. But then he saw it. She was afraid of him too, and that hurt more than anything else. "Claire," he whispered, not sure if he was asking or pleading. "You need to leave," she said, her voice shaking, her arm being pulled back toward the car. "You shouldn't be here." But there was something no one had noticed. She was bleeding. On her left wrist, beneath her worn coat, a thin line of blood trickled slowly, as if she'd been breaking inside for days, unseen. And now, in the chaos, the wound reopened. The man dragging her didn't notice, or didn't care. The billionaire saw it, and something in him snapped. This wasn't just the woman he once loved. This was the mother of the boy he'd unknowingly saved, someone who had been surviving while he was busy running. He grabbed the man's arm and tore him away with force. When the punch came, he didn't hesitate. He blocked it, fought back. The impact was muffled, brutal. Claire screamed. The second man ran. The car sped off. But she stayed. She stayed. And for the first time, the two of them were face to face. With nothing between them, no money, no silence, no past, just a canyon. She was breathing hard. Pale face, eyes full. He reached out slowly. She hesitated, then finally took his hand. He said, "Dad," he murmured, when he woke up. "That's what he said." Claire closed her eyes. For a moment, all the pain, all the anger softened, as if that word, spoken in her son's voice, had echoed inside her too. "He calls you that because he dreams about you," she said, "but you were never there, not at his birth, not through the fevers, not on his birthdays." The silence between them was heavier than everything else. But he had to ask, "Why did you leave? Why did you take him?" Claire trembled. The answer wasn't easy, but she couldn't run anymore. "Because you told me to," she said, her voice steady, stronger than he remembered. "You said I was a mistake, that the baby was a burden, and I believed you. I left before he was born. I thought I was saving him from you." He swallowed hard, remembered their last fight, the shouted words, the broken glass, the cry muffled in the hallway, and he understood. She didn't run. She protected herself, but there was still something she hadn't told him. She looked around, nervous. "They weren't after me," she whispered. "They were after him." "The boy? No. The other one." He froze. "Other?" Claire nodded, then pointed to her belly hidden under her old coat. She didn't have to say anything more. He understood it was too late to go back, because the future was knocking. And it wasn't coming alone. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit that like button. The city lights started blinking on one by one, like eyes opening too late. The billionaire looked at Claire, at the dirty scarf wrapped around her bleeding wrist, and at the old coat that hid more than just the cold. Inside her, another child. And between the lines of everything she wasn't saying, the fear of a woman who knew she could no longer protect anyone on her own. They got into a black-tinted car, the only remnant of his old life still intact. Claire hesitated as she sat in the passenger seat, as if the leather upholstery screamed everything they had lost. The billionaire started the engine, but didn't pull away. He stared at the steering wheel, as if he'd forgotten how to drive. Or as if the road ahead was more dangerous than any turn, but he still didn't know the worst part. Claire didn't trust him. Not fully. Maybe not at all. She'd gotten in the car because she had no strength left to run, because she was scared. And because deep down she knew, even the man who broke her was safer than the two who had followed her through the streets. "They know who you are," she said bluntly. "I know," he replied, eyes still on the road. "That changes everything." Silence. "What do they want?" Claire turned to the window, her reflection blurred in the fogged-up glass. She took a deep breath before answering, as if each word reopened an old wound. The older boy overheard a conversation about a shipment. Fake meds. A warehouse on the east side. He wrote it all down in a notebook. She paused. Urgency filled her eyes. "They think I have it." He nearly slammed the brakes. "You're telling me my son—" He hesitated, corrected himself. Our son overheard a criminal operation, and now you're being hunted. Claire nodded. They came to his school, then followed us to the shelter. That's why we've been living on the street. But there was something she didn't know. He had heard of this case. A confidential report had landed on his desk weeks ago, a network laundering money through counterfeit drugs. He'd dismissed it. Not his concern. A problem for the streets. Now, that problem was in his car. Inside the woman he let go, running in the blood of two boys who never called another man dad. Where's the notebook? Hidden, she said, and even I don't know where. The night felt heavier as they arrived at the abandoned warehouse, where Claire and the boys had been staying. The place reeked of rust and urine. The gate was ajar. The second boy was already waiting by the door. He ran to Claire, wrapped his arms around her waist tightly, then looked at the man with suspicion. He said nothing, but the judgment in his eyes was loud. He helped us, Claire told her son, trying to fill the silence with something that resembled dignity. For now, we'll trust him. The boy didn't respond. He just turned and walked into the warehouse, and then the crack happened. As the billionaire stepped through the doorway, he gagged on the smell, coughed, staggered. He had to lean. On the wall, it was like stepping into a void. His head spun, his eyes searched for a chair, anything. Claire rushed to him. What is it? I don't know, he whispered, clutching his chest. But she knew, and so did he. The last time he'd been in a place like this was the day his younger brother died of an overdose, years ago, alone, in a place just like this. The smell, the cold, that feeling of helplessness. It all came back, and for the first time he couldn't hide it. Claire saw it, and for a moment that was bigger than any resentment. You never cried for him, did you? She asked. He shook his head. Not at the funeral. Not at the hospital. Why? Because I thought pain made me weak, that admitting he needed me made it my fault. Claire said nothing. The older boy, standing near the door, was listening. And now? She asked. Now. I feel it, he said quietly. And I don't know what to do with it. But there was something none of them expected. From deep within the warehouse, between stacked boxes, a phone started ringing. It wasn't Claire's. It wasn't the billionaire's, it was the boy's, he answered. Hello? The voice on the other end was metallic, low, and said only one thing. We know where you are. And then the line went dead. The phone slipped from his hand and skidded across the rough warehouse floor, spinning to a stop at the billionaire's feet. No one moved. The tension was thick, suffocating. The billionaire bent down, picked it up. But the screen was already dark. The call had ended, or been cut, or monitored. Claire instinctively brought her hand to her belly, as if trying to protect what hadn't even been born yet from everything closing in. The older boy stepped forward, clutching his notebook to his chest. It wasn't just fear now. It was the certainty that everything was about to fall apart, again. But no one yet knew the worst part. Outside there was movement. The billionaire killed the lights with a single click, ran to a side window, pulled one of the nailed planks aside and looked out. Two dark cars were pulling up slowly to the corner. Doors opened. Figures stepped out, 3 on each side. They didn't speak, didn't glance around. They just advanced. Like people who already knew exactly where to go. Claire pressed herself against the wall, gasping for breath. The older boy trembled. The younger one began to cry silently, as if he had already learned that even crying could be dangerous. We need to leave, now, the billionaire said, but there was a problem. They've surrounded us, Claire whispered. Every exit's covered. Inside, then. A basement? Rooftop? He asked, scanning the room like a drowning man looking for air. The boy, with the notebook pointed toward the back of the warehouse. There's a freight elevator. Goes straight to the old basement. But it's packed with junk. The billionaire didn't hesitate. He ran. The elevator was old, rusted metal gates, buttons that looked long dead. He forced the door open, yanked the grate hard until it finally gave with a metallic screech. Claire was already rushing over with the boys. The sound of the first gunshot stopped them cold. Now the danger was real. The window shattered. Glass flew. The younger boy screamed. Claire pulled him down, shielding him with her body. The billionaire grabbed the older boy and shoved him into the elevator. They all got inside in seconds that felt like hours. He pulled the gate shut. Pressed the basement button. By some miracle, the old machine responded. It began to descend, groaning, shaking, like each foot was being torn from rusted cables. "They'll follow us," Claire said. "They won't find you down there," the billionaire replied. "And you?" He didn't answer, because there was something he had to do. When they reached the basement, he helped them out and gently pulled the door shut behind them. He didn't lock it, just looked at Claire, at the boys, and said firmly, "Stay here, I'm going to slow them down." "No!" Claire grabbed his arm. "You don't understand. They kill people. I understand more than you think." And then he did something unexpected. He pulled a small black capsule from the inside pocket of his jacket. Claire frowned. "What is that?" "A tracker," he said. "If I don't make it back, my lawyer gets the signal, along with everything I've stored about this scheme, videos, accounts, names." Claire stared at him, trying to make sense of it. "You knew." "I suspected, I just didn't connect the dots, and not until now, and now it's too late to pretend I'm not part of it." He went back up. The elevator rose like a groaning metal ghost. Upstairs, the shadows were already inside, kicking boxes, shouting names, searching. They didn't know exactly where they were, but they knew they were close. The billionaire made himself visible, just enough. Let one of the men spot him behind a stack of crates. The man drew his gun, but didn't shoot. He spoke into his radio, waited, because the billionaire wasn't just another target. He was leverage, but there was something that gunmen didn't know. The billionaire wasn't alone. From the second floor of the warehouse, 2 private security men emerged, silent shadows. They'd followed the billionaire for years. Not just for the paycheck, but for a debt. One had a brother, an ER nurse the billionaire once saved in a case no one remembered. The other, an ex-federal agent the billionaire cleared from a false accusation. Now, they were armed. They fired first. Chaos exploded. But down in the basement, Claire and the boys didn't hear the gunfire. They heard something else. A beep. Faint, steady beep. Coming from the notebook the boy had set on the floor, she opened it and saw there was more than notes inside. There was a chip. And on that chip, a video of a transaction with the billionaire's voice. The video began to play on the small screen, and for a moment Claire forgot to breathe. The image was grainy, filmed from a distance, but clear enough. A warehouse. Men. Boxes, insulin, antibiotics, counterfeit packaging, and then the voice, no face, just a voice, familiar, commanding. It was him. The man now risking his life upstairs, for her and the boys, the billionaire. But none of them knew the worst part yet. Claire watched in silence. The boys looked at her, trying to understand what it meant. The older one realized it first. His body stiffened, his fists clenched. The tears came fast, not from fear but from betrayal. "It was him the whole time," he whispered. "We were running." "From him?" Claire tried to explain, but there was nothing to say. The video continued. In a clearer segment with better audio, the same voice said, "I don't care if the meds aren't perfect. This is volume, not charity. No one's going to notice." It was old, maybe years, maybe more, but it didn't matter. That voice was now a fault line, splitting apart the man he was trying to become. Upstairs, the billionaire fought on. His security held the line, but the gunfire intensified. One of them took a bullet to the shoulder and dropped with a muffled cry. The billionaire dragged him behind a shelf, pressing the wound with his bare hands. "Hang on. Just 2 more minutes," he said, but even he didn't believe it anymore. The other guard threw a smoke grenade. For a moment, the warehouse vanished into a storm of fog and moving shadows. The invaders pulled back slightly, but they knew time was on their side. It was only a matter of surrounding them, and the billionaire knew it. That's when it all collapsed. Through the haze, someone shouted his name. Not a warning, a cry, full of hurt. It was the boy. He had come up the side stairs. Notebook in hand, holding it like a weapon or a final answer. He stood before the billionaire, coughing in the smoke, eyes burning. "It was you!" he shouted, voice breaking. The billionaire couldn't speak. He couldn't lie. "You knew. All of it. And still that you left us out there with nothing. No food, no school. We were sleeping on the ground while you—" The boy stopped. His throat closed. Words failed. The billionaire stepped forward, reached out. The boy stepped back. "You pretended," he said. "Until now." But there was something no one expected. The billionaire dropped to his knees, not because he was hit, not because he was shoved. He collapsed like a man breaking from the inside out, hands on the dirty floor, eyes locked on the concrete. And then he cried, not like before, not holding back, but falling apart completely. "I was part of this," he said, barely breathing. "I knew I was part of it for years, but I didn't know. It involved kids, that it involved you, that it involved him." Claire appeared moments later, pulling the youngest boy with her. She stopped when she saw the scene, her older son standing, the notebook in hand, the billionaire on his knees broken, and her, somewhere in between like a fractured bridge. "Why now?" she asked, voice filled with both fury and tenderness. "Why show up only now?" He lifted his face, eyes red and swollen, his cheeks smeared with ash and dust. "Because I had a nightmare," he said, "and in it, the boy died, holding a note, and on that note, there was just one word, Dad." Claire covered her mouth. The boy looked down at the notebook, and then silence. But it didn't last. A sharp crack echoed through the warehouse. A bullet tore through a steel beam. Someone was coming through. The back. The wounded guard shouted, "They're in the east corridor." The other guard fired blindly, just to buy time, but he knew it too. There was no way out now, and then the older boy did something unexpected. He handed the notebook to the billionaire. "You want to make this right," he said. "Then end it. Take this. Expose them. All of them. Even if you go down too." The billionaire took the notebook. His eyes were steady. His body shook, and he knew in that moment exactly what he had to do. But as he turned to run, Claire grabbed his arm. "If you go, you might not come back." He looked at her, then at the boys. "But if I stay, none of us are getting out of here." And he ran, but at the gate, someone was waiting. And it wasn't an enemy. It was someone from his past, and he was armed. The night air cut like a blade as the billionaire sprinted down the alley beside the warehouse, the notebook pressed tight to his chest, footsteps echoing against the concrete. He knew time was short, knew every corner could be his last, but nothing prepared him for what he saw at the iron gate. The man standing there wasn't a stranger. It was Claire's brother, the one he swore he'd never see again. And no one knew the worst part. The man wasn't alone. He was holding a thermal medical bag, the kind used to carry temperature-sensitive medications. Beside him were two church shelter volunteers, all out of breath. His shirt was bloodied, but it didn't look like his own. "What are you doing here?" the billionaire asked, breathless. "Because she called me. Yesterday, after all these years," the brother replied. "She said she didn't trust you, but she trusted everyone else even less." The billionaire lowered his eyes. That hurt more than any bullet, because it was true, and because, despite everything, Claire had still tried to protect him from total disgrace. "Is the police coming?" he asked. "Not yet, but we've got something better." He nodded to one of the volunteers, who unzipped a backpack and revealed a drone equipped with thermal cameras and live GPS. "We recorded everything since the cars pulled up. The gunfire, the threats, faces. We're going live with it." But there was something the billionaire knew that they didn't. "That's not enough," he said. "They'll wipe it, bribe their way out, bury the video. This is the only shot we've got." And he held up the notebook. That's when the screams came from deep inside the warehouse. Someone wounded, someone running. Chaos wasn't over yet. And then a child's voice sliced through the alley like a knife. "Dad!" The billionaire. I turned, eyes wide. It was the younger boy, running toward them, alone, eyes wild with fear. Claire followed behind him, limping, one hand on her belly. The older boy helped one of the guards along. "They breached the basement," Claire said. They were waiting, but there was something no one expected. The man who had come after them didn't want money, didn't want the notebook. He wanted vengeance. He was a father. His child had died from contaminated insulin, and in the dark corners of that rotten supply chain, he found the name behind the approvals. Not directly the billionaire, but his signature was there, his voice, his company. And now the man had traded grief for fury. "He wants to kill you," Claire said. The billionaire swallowed hard, but he didn't run, didn't hide. He simply handed the notebook to Claire's brother and took a step forward. "Let me talk to him." "You're insane," the brother said, grabbing his arm. "He lost a child, and if I can't meet that pain with mine, then I don't deserve anything I'm trying to rebuild." And then he stepped back into the warehouse. Inside, the armed man stood over the wounded guard. The older boy stood between them, trying to protect him. Claire screamed the billionaire's name from a distance, but he walked slowly, hands raised, as if offering his chest to his own past. "He didn't do anything," the boy said, his voice cracking. He's trying." The man cocked the gun. Tears streamed down his face, but his hand didn't shake. "I saw the video. It's him." The billionaire stopped. "Yes, that's my voice. And that's why I'm here," he paused. "My brother died in a place like this. Because of expired meds. I didn't even go to the funeral. I ran. I've been running my whole life. But today, I showed up." The man hesitated. "I came to ask for forgiveness. And if that's not enough, then take me. But let them go. Take my guilt, not theirs." Silence dropped like a weight. And then the gun lowered. The man collapsed to his knees. He broke. Not with rage, but with grief. The kind no one had ever seen. The kind no one had ever heard. The billionaire embraced him, right there, amid the blood and the dust, between the past and what little future they had, between guilt and redemption. But there was something no one saw. A hidden camera, high on one of the beams, was streaming everything. Live, and within minutes, the whole world would know. Morning sunlight broke through the shattered roof, slicing through the suspended dust like beams of judgment. The warehouse was quiet now, not a battleground anymore, but a field of survivors. The smoke had cleared, the gunshots had stopped, but what was left behind was even harder to bear: the stillness after collapse. The billionaire sat against the cold wall, eyes fixed on a place between rusted beams, lost, his hands still stained with blood, not his, but of stories that would never wash off. Next to him, the man who wanted to kill him was asleep, leaning against a pile of boxes, spent. No more words between them. Just the shared silence of two people who'd carried pain no one else would ever understand, but no one there knew the worst part. Claire watched from across the room. The younger boy slept in her arms, exhausted. The older boy leaned on her shoulder, the notebook now closed in his hands. She gently ran her fingers through their hair, slowly, as if relearning how to comfort, as if her hands, hardened by years of fear, were remembering what tenderness was. And then she stood, walked toward him, the billionaire. She stopped in front of him, eyes steady, then sat down slowly beside him. "The press will be here." "Any minute now," she said. He didn't respond. "The video's everywhere, on every feed, every site, your names, it's going down, your company, your image, everything." He nodded. "No theatrics, no defense." "It's the least I deserve," he said, his voice hoarse. She took a deep breath. The silence between them was a kind of reconciliation that didn't need words. It was presence. It was the fact that they were both still there, sitting on the same broken ground, where so much had fallen apart, and yet still breathing. "I hated you for years," she said, "not for what you did, but for what you never had the courage to feel." He closed his eyes. That hit harder than any accusation before, because it was true. He didn't feel, or rather, he avoided feeling, as if emotion were a luxury that didn't belong with his tailored suits or boardroom meetings. "And now?" Claire asked. "What do you feel?" He looked at her, then at the boys asleep for the first time in days, truly at peace. "Fear," he said. "That it's not enough, that I'm too late." Claire was silent for a moment. Then as she extended her hand, he looked at it. That hand that once pushed him away, that once held him by the neck, that had written letters he never read. And now, it offered a beginning. He took it, but there was still something that needed to be said. "The baby," she whispered. He turned his face. His eyes burned. "I know," he said softly. "And this time, I stay." She nodded. She didn't smile, didn't cry, she just accepted it. As if time had finally grown tired of punishing and was slowly starting to give. Her brother returned minutes later with the church volunteers. They brought clean clothes, hot food, blankets. The younger boy woke up and ran into his arms. The older one stood back, more guarded. But when the billionaire stood and approached, he didn't pull away. "We're still mad at you," the boy said firmly. "So am I," the billionaire replied. "But if you want to," the boy added, "you can try. Start over." The billionaire knelt in front of both boys, looked into their eyes, and then did something he had never done before. "Can I hug you?" he asked the younger one. The boy hesitated, then stepped forward, and the hug came. Tight, quick, like the body was ready to forgive before the mind could catch up. Outside, sirens echoed, journalists, ambulances, patrol cars. The city was finally waking up to the story. But in the middle of the crowd, a woman walked slowly, simple clothes, an envelope in her hands. As she approached, Claire recognized her. She was the mother of the child who had died from the tainted insulin. She held out the envelope to the billionaire. "He wrote this before he died," she said. "We never knew who it was for, but today I understand." He opened it. The letters were shaky, childlike, and read only, "If someone finds this, protect the others." And in that moment he knew he had to do so much more. But from the rooftop of a nearby building, a lens was watching, and on the other end, and someone still wanted revenge. The lens watched everything. It wasn't press, it wasn't police surveillance, it was personal, installed with precision, operated with patience. Behind it, a man who didn't blink. His eyes locked on the billionaire, now hugging children, answering reporters, becoming the face of a redemption story the public desperately wanted to believe. But no one there knew the worst part. The man on the rooftop had a name, and a reason far deeper than vengeance. He didn't want justice. He wanted the end. Not the end of the billionaire, the end of the system that protected him. Years ago, he was an employee of the same company, a lab technician, honest, persistent. He warned about defects in a batch of children's antibiotics. They ignored him, then threatened him, then fired him. His daughter died weeks later, and now he didn't want headlines. He wanted destruction. As the lens captured the billionaire's public embrace, a phone vibrated beside the rooftop operator. A countdown, 30 minutes. That was the timer he had set for the bomb in the car parked outside the church. Then he pressed activate. Down below, the billionaire was giving his first statement. "I'm not here as a businessman, I'm here as a father, as a man who failed, who covered things up even without realizing it, who stayed silent when I should have spoken." Reporters pressed forward, cameras flashed. Claire stood in the background, holding both boys' hands. Her brother filmed with his phone. The volunteers passed out blankets and meals nearby. But something was off. The older boy, ever watchful, walked to the side of the street. He saw a dark car, windows up, engine off, an older model. But on the dashboard, a strange glow. He ran. "Back. There's something wrong over there," he said, tugging the billionaire's sleeve. The billionaire frowned. He motioned for a volunteer to check it out. The man approached the car and then stopped. He saw what was on the dashboard and backed away, yelling, "It's a bomb! Everybody get back!" Chaos erupted, screams, running, sirens again. Claire dropped to the ground, shielding her sons. The billionaire ran toward the car, against all orders, against every instinct, because he saw something else, an envelope on the passenger seat, with his name on it. He opened the door slowly. The timer read 12 minutes. He took the envelope, stepped back, read it aloud. Only one sentence. "You saved 2. But how many did you let die?" He froze. The world spun around him, but he stood still. And then he saw him. The man on the rooftop. The billionaire climbed alone. Heavy steps. Trembling legs. But he went. At the top he found the man. Armed. Pale. But calm. "It's done," the man said. "You can't stop it. There's no disarm. It's chemical, not digital." "What do you want?" the billionaire asked. "For you to see, to know what it's like to lose." The billionaire walked to the edge, saw the street below, police trying to evacuate, children crying, ambulances on standby. "You think I've never lost?" he said quietly. "I lost my brother, my wife, my children. I lost my soul. And now if I have to, I'll lose everything." The man didn't respond. "But you won't decide who dies today, I will." And then he didn't jump off the building. He jumped out of the narrative. He ran down the stairs like lightning, straight to the car. He got in and hit the gas. "Officers!" shouted. Claire screamed his name, but he didn't stop. He drove the car straight to the bridge, 2 blocks away. The timer, 2 minutes, and he drove the car into the river. The explosion came seconds later, underwater. The impact shook windows for blocks, waves crashed, shards of metal flew, and then silence. Claire dropped to her knees. The boys clung to their uncle, but no one knew yet. He wasn't in the car. Smoke rose from the river like a whisper in the cold morning air. The bridge was blocked. Patrol cars lined up, ambulances still. The submerged vehicle had gone down fast, leaving only bubbles, twisted metal, and a silence louder than any sound. The city watched, stunned, as if witnessing a miracle undone in the very last second. But no one knew the final part. Claire didn't. Moved from the ground for several minutes. The boys trembled beside her, clinging to her coat, trying to understand what they'd lost. Not just a man, but a chance, a promise, a possible father. She slowly lifted her eyes, searching the sky for an answer. There was only grey. A dirty, silent sky, watching like a mute accomplice to fate. Her brother knelt beside her, tried to speak, but there were no words, only the sound of the river trying to erase the past. Then, the police radio crackled, a voice, weak, ragged, but alive. "I'm okay, repeat, I'm okay." The officers looked at one another. Claire shot to her feet. "It's him," she shouted. The signal came from under the bridge. Divers ran to the edge. They found markings on the concrete, a narrow drainage tunnel, part of the city's old infrastructure, and inside, soaking wet. Knees scraped, face smeared with oil. The billionaire. He had jumped from the car just seconds before the blast, rolled along the edge of the concrete and dragged himself into the tunnel entrance. He knew he couldn't disarm the bomb, but he could swim, he could escape. And now, he knew he wanted to live. When he emerged from the shadows and faced the floodlights of the emergency vehicles, he didn't smile. He just searched for Claire's eyes. She ran. The boys followed, and for the first time, the 4 of them embraced as one. As something the world had tried to destroy but failed, but there was still something left to do. In the days that followed, the video of the explosion spread across the globe. The billionaire's face, tired, soaked, human, became a symbol of collapse and rebuilding. But he declined interviews, turned down awards, sold all his shares in the company, handed every file over to the FBI, and then he disappeared. Claire found him again 3 months later. In a small house in rural Pennsylvania, he was growing vegetables, teaching math to local kids, and renovating a broken-down library. He wore plain clothes, rode a bike, and answered to a different name, not to hide but to relearn. "Why here?" she asked one afternoon, sitting barefoot on the porch, her feet resting on the warm wood. "Because here," he said, "no one cares who I used to be, just whether I can help paint the fence." She looked at him for a long time. "And can you?" He smiled. Small. Genuine. "I'm still learning." In town, the boys went to school. The younger one started drawing again. The older one practiced. Basketball every afternoon, and little by little they began to call that place home. Not because they forgot what they had lived through, but because the ground finally stopped shaking beneath their feet. Every afternoon, Claire walked with him down to the lake. She was 8 months along now, and sometimes in the quiet rippling of the water, she would say things she hadn't even said on the worst days. "I don't know if I forgive everything," she admitted once. "I don't either," he said. "But I know I'm here, and maybe that's the beginning." "Yeah," he nodded. "Sometimes starting over doesn't mean going back. It just means taking a different road." She looked at him. The wind tangled his hair. And in that moment, there was no billionaire, no fugitive, no guilty man, just a man, with dirt on his hands and a soul still healing. Back on the porch, the youngest sat drawing. With crayons, he sketched a green field, a lake, a small house. And beside it, 4 figures, a woman in a dress, 2 boys, and a man holding a baby. At the top of the page, he wrote just one word: family. But halfway across the world, in a dark room, someone watched the news with narrowed eyes. On the screen, his name appeared again, and the person's fingers slid a new folder into place with a single label: "He still owes. Thanks for staying with us all the way to the end. But don't leave just yet. In the next video, you'll find another powerful story waiting for you. Click, subscribe, and share. I'll see you there."